Get ready to embark on an electrifying entrepreneurial journey.
Join us as we dive into the minds of 5 extraordinary entrepreneurs who have scaled online businesses to awe-inspiring heights. Gary Green, Chris Miller, Lori Brown, Bobby Christie, and Terry Wilson are here to share their secrets of success.
From visionaries to marketing mavens, these remarkable individuals will unveil their strategies, challenges, and pivotal moments that shaped their rise.
The Big 5 podcast starts now.
I think Miller Time had the correct assessment. We're going to change the name of the Big 5 to the Fab 4. Because we just can't get it together, can we, folks? I tell you, when you have a bunch of busy, self-employed entrepreneurs, that's what it's like. I mean, we typically record this show for the listeners. We record this typically like at 9 o'clock at night on a Monday night. Well, it just so happens scheduling on my end didn't work for this time. And then we rescheduled for this, and Lori's on the road. And then Gary had something come up. He's got like 5 clients he's closing today at 1 o'clock. He says, can we bump it back to 2? And I was like, no, I got to be on the road headed down to Bobby's house here in just a second. So I'm headed to Georgia. But this is episode 5, and we're talking about developing a message that resonates. I love what John Maxwell, have you guys listened to Maxwell any, or am I the only one that consumes him? I love his stuff. He says stuff in such a piffy way. He says, everyone communicates, but very few people connect. And I think effective marketing means that you know how to communicate in a way that connects with your listener. Now, before I get too far into this particular episode, I want to play something for you guys, and for the listener here, they don't know what I'm doing. I'm setting them up just so they can react in real time so you can hear their real response. But something very phenomenal happened last week on social media, and this thing has just gone viral. And I think it's a case study in knowing how to connect with people and resonate with people, and having the 3 elements of communication that does connect, which is authenticity, which is also authority, knowing what you're talking about, and also having accessibility, saying it in a way that connects with your audience. I want to play just a snippet of this. You guys are going to laugh, but here it goes.
I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay, so I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do. 'Cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men know the rich men.
Now, if you guys have been on YouTube at all, you probably have heard this song. Is any of you guys hearing this for the first time? Or has everybody heard this?
No. Well, I listen to a lot of talk radio, and you know where I lean.
Yeah.
This way.
Well, Bobby, have you heard this?
Yes.
Chris, have you heard this?
Yeah.
I didn't hear this until like Thursday or Friday, and it wasn't through talk radio. It was just perusing the internet, and it kept showing up in my feed, and my feed was saying this guy has just gone viral. And anybody that goes viral with content, well, I want to know, what are they doing? And so that, of course, put me down a rabbit hole, and all of a sudden I'm seeing people from the left, from the right. I'm seeing people black, people white. I'm seeing all kinds of people reacting to this and having the same emotional response that I had the first time I heard it, which I just sat there and cried. Because you can hear it. Yeah, I'm not a bluegrass fan, in all honesty here. I'm more of a rock, R&B, blues guy. But boy, I mean, you know, that lonesome voice crying in the wilderness up there in that tenor, and just the pain that this guy is obviously emoting here of life. And, you know, I don't want to turn this into a reaction podcast, but at the same time, boy, does that message resonate.
Well, the message does resonate in a big way. And there's really a couple of lessons in it. Because one, you know, if this guy would have had a record contract, that sucker would be in the trash bin.
Absolutely.
It would have never it would have never seen the light of day.
That's true.
And, you know, because I think the guy actually called the guy from Big and Rich.
Yeah.
To ask for some advice. And he said, don't sign anything.
Stay an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And so, you know, he says, don't, you know, and the way he kind of framed it was, don't go anywhere near a record company. And he said, you've got something and you've got a voice.
Yeah.
And, you know, to basically stay true to your voice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and interestingly, he's not like a polished musician or anything. He's got a good voice. He's got kind of that character, but it's not like a great voice. And he's not a great guitar player.
No.
And he didn't have great equipment. It was just him and a mic.
Yeah, a mic and an iPhone.
He didn't have a great background. You know, it wasn't produced. But to your point, people connected with it. They saw themselves in him, and what he was feeling and what he was thinking, and the emotion and almost angst.
Yeah.
Of his observations of our world today, and that's what people connected with.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I thought so.
Absolutely. Yeah, he just opened up his heart and let it come out.
Yes. Yeah. Heart on his sleeve.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing, though? It really does come down to that old cliche slogan and quote that we always give by Maya Angelou, but it's so simple, it's overlooked. People, they'll forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. And that guy right there on the front end had me, it's sort of like, you know, you had me at hello. I mean, just within the first chord in that crying in the wilderness sound, you know, that high lonesome tenor, as they say. I was like, what? And then he goes into it, and then he's using working man's language. I mean, it ain't flowered up. He's talking about what his dollar's worth, what he's getting paid, you know, and he can't stay ahead. And there's lyrics there talking about taxes on it. If you're 5'3" and 300 pounds, taxes. I mean, I was just like, boy, he ain't pulling no punches. And so it resonates. Anybody that's gone to the grocery store or pumped gas in the last few years can feel what that man's singing about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so for us as marketers and business owners and people that have been given a charge to take our value and make sure it's understood by the populace, man, there's a lot of things to learn from just this phenomenon that just happened in the last 7 days with this guy. And that's number one. And first and foremost, we can wax poetically all day long about, you know, technology and funnels and landing pages and all of that other stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about what can we do for you, not how we do it, but where you are now, the pain you feel. I have a product, good, or service that I feel like can take you from point A to point B, because that's what people understand.
Mm-hmm.
The other stuff, and I am the world's worst at getting lost in my own jargon, getting lost in words and in language and concepts and constructs that it don't resonate to that person I'm trying to reach sometimes. And so I'm constantly having to go back to the woodshed and think, what would a person that is in today's world, 2023, that's in the sphere of things that I want to market to, what are they feeling? Where are they at? And how can I connect the dots?
Yeah, well, it's like when you're in sales, for example, and you start a new product or a new service or whatever that you're pushing. You get pretty good at it initially, but then as you learn more about it, your sales start to get a little bit further away, right? Because you start talking too much and not listening to your prospect anymore. They're telling you how to sell them, right? So that's exactly kind of the thing you're talking about. It's the more you learn, the more you start, I want to get it all out there. And, especially in the marketing world, you definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You just give them a little taste. You whet their appetite for more,
Absolutely.
Well, and Terry, to your point, I think you have to know who your audience is. So you have to create a persona of your ideal customer based on what their age is, gender, location, their interests, values, behaviors, buying habits. And then you create a persona based on that. So you got to know who your audience is, create the persona, and then the next step is to understand what their pain points are, perhaps, or what their goals are. And then all your messaging, all your marketing from your logo, your colors, images, ads, anything that you say in an email, it has to connect in simple terms, like you were saying. Dumb it down to like, I'm talking to a fifth grader, right? And be able to connect with them and understand you're not going to connect with, and I've heard you say this a million times, Terry, you're not going to connect with everybody. But you're going to connect with enough people that it'll work for you.
Yeah.
Right, people.
That's right. Well, let's go through this. I laid out, and I alluded to it on the front end. I came up with what I feel like are three sort of pillars to crafting a message that is going to not just communicate, but connect. And so the first one here is authenticity, and that's the power of being genuine in your communication. Authenticity lies at the heart of every influential message. Think about the individuals who have left a lasting impact on you. Chances are they communicated in a way that felt sincere and relatable. Authenticity involves being true to yourself and your values, which in turn fosters trust, connection with your audience. When crafting your message, remember to, number one, be transparent. Number two, speak from the heart. And number three, avoid just trying to be over polished. So going around the horn, who is someone that you can think of that in the past has been very authentic with their communications with you and has left an impact and some lessons maybe that you're bringing forward today? Anybody want to start?
I will. The probably the one that resonates the most with me right now is Zig Ziglar. I had the opportunity to meet him and to get to know him a little bit.
Yeah.
And, he just was old Zig from Yazoo City, Mississippi.
Yeah.
And he never forgot where he was from. And I think I originally met him in Columbia, South Carolina. And the thing that was amazing is that, what you see is what you got.
Yeah.
And I'll relay that back to that video, that song that you first played, because one of the things that you have to have in a marketing campaign, sales presentation, whatever, is you got to have three things. You got to have a hook, you got to have a story, and you have to have an offer. And, like you said, when that song started, the hook was, wait a minute, that's different.
Yeah.
So you stopped what you were doing to pay a listen. And then you got caught up in his story. And, we'll see what the offer is, but his story was authentic.
Yeah.
And it came from the heart. And you can't fake that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we have to be careful of. And the other thing that I really took away from when I watched that video the first couple of times, it was homemade.
Yeah.
And it wasn't polished. There wasn't big time lights. There wasn't a director. There wasn't multiple retakes. What you see is what you got. And it should speak to marketers and salespeople is that we don't have to be perfect. We just have to be good enough.
Yeah.
And if you're your authentic self, you don't need the best of the best of the best.
That's right.
Because how many times do people get caught up in trying to make it perfect?
Yeah.
And every sales piece, every marketing piece that we put out, there comes a point where good is good enough and you got to test it. I mean, I would rather put it together in 20 minutes and get it out in the marketplace to begin to test it, because I'll know what's good and what's bad in a hurry. Because if I spend a gazillion days, hours, whatever, trying to put the piece together and I think it's perfect and I put it out there and it falls flat on its face, I don't know why it fell flat on its face.
Yeah.
And you can't get that time back.
And I don't get the time back. Correct.
That is true. That is true. And I'm right there with you, Bobby, on Zig. He's probably had the greatest impact. I mean, my first job selling cookware was because of Zig Ziglar. He recruited Larry Reichard, which recruited me. And so that was my sort of the foundation of everything I understand about business and life was from Zig, good old South Carolina boy. So I'm right there with you on that. Who else has got a story about someone that's influenced them and some takeaways that they have imparted in you about being authentic and genuine and leveraging the power of just yourself and who you are?
Well, there was a lot of good things that resonate with people, and things that resonated with me over the years. You guys remember Cy Sperling, right?
I know the name.
I'm not only the president of Hair Club.
Yes.
I'm also a client.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's a pretty good line right there. And it showed his authenticity.
Yeah.
And how he's willing to back up his product, and that's the way that I kind of try to live with the things that I do. I think most of the clients that I have, they come with me overall because I'm not always the cheapest guy in town. Matter of fact, I'm very rarely the cheapest guy in town. I mean, when I was a hypnotherapist working with the VA to do things for pain management for the veterans, I had to be in business on my own for a year and a half before I could get the contract. And that wasn't what I signed up for. I signed up to get the contract, right? But then we're like, nope, can't give you the contract because you haven't been in business a year and a half. Okay, so I did that for a year and a half on my own. Well, I was certainly not the cheapest guy in town, right? Because I was 3 times as expensive. But they came with me because they listened to the story. And the story was how I overcame my brain injury during the war and how I used hypnotherapy as a way to help me do that. And it helped me so much that I decided I wanted to learn how to become a hypnotherapist and help other guys in this situation. So that's what they came with me, not because I was cheapest guy in town, but because of that authenticity, because I had lived it first.
Yeah.
I wasn't only the president, I was also a client, right? So that's how I kind of do things still to this day. I walk it before I teach it.
Yeah.
I do it before I say, here's how you do it.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's what we all do.
Yeah.
And that's why we're all successful at what we're doing.
I agree.
Because people can feel that.
Absolutely.
If you're snowing somebody, they know it.
Absolutely. And if they don't know it on the front end, they sure figure it out on the back end and be even angrier with you for sure. For sure. Miss Lori, who's had a great impact on you because of their authenticity?
Well, I just want to say the way Bobby positioned that and phrased that was spot on. And that, I mean, Bobby and I are pretty good friends anyway, but that really spoke to me, Bobby. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a guy, I don't hear too many people talking about him. Jeffrey Gitomer is his name. And he wrote a book called The Little Red Book of Sales. And then he's got a little green book of something.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just little books. But his philosophy of selling is that you sell yourself first. And then you give value before you start selling anything. And then once you go through those steps with your prospect, that's going to make them want to buy with you. To Chris's point, what was his point? He connected with them. He sold himself. He sold his story. And that's why they wanted to do business with him. So there you go. Jeffrey Gitomer. Okay, great stuff. Anyone in sales should get that little red book.
Yeah. And I would just tell everyone listening, if you struggle with authenticity, get with a coach, get with someone that can help you walk through that, because there's some real psychological objections people have from time to time. You know, one of the year after year after year sort of polls that I sort of laugh at, but it is true. For the last several years I follow this, where they're talking about people's greatest fears, you know, and I've even mentioned it, I think, on this podcast, where Seinfeld has that funny bit about, you know, more people are afraid of public speaking than they are dying, which his punchline is, that means more people are afraid of being in their funeral than actually, or speaking at their funeral than actually being the one in it, which is hysterical. But it comes to the point where people, the reason public speaking is always a top fear is because people don't like to be under the microscope and feel like people are looking at them, watching them, and judging them. And as that is a basic human fear that everyone, statistically speaking, suffers from, it stands to reason then that your communication style is going to augment and modify to try to be appeasing to people. And you're always in the back of your head, what do people want to hear? What do people want to see? What can I do, say, or look like to be attractive to my market, to my audience, to that person in front of me? And here's the problem with that I have found is you start role playing, you start speaking in a different voice, you start trying to look different, act different, be different. You're not your authentic self. And people pick up on a deep psychological level, this person's lying to me. Now, it might not be for nefarious reasons. Might not be because I'm trying to take your money or I'm trying to pull the wool over your eyes. It might just be a basic human need of saying, I want you to validate me and validate my offer and validate what I'm saying. I don't want to be rejected. Therefore, I'm pretending and I'm trying to act like a certain thing or person. And in that process, that's the number one reason I see so many salespeople fail and so many business owners fail is they haven't picked up on their real voice, their authentic self. And one of the things I would teach and tell anyone listening, a great tack that I have used for years now that has served me well, is when I know that I've got these little idiosyncrasies or these little faux pas that I continually make, I shine a light on it and make fun of it myself. I'll beat you to the punch. You know, that way I neutralize it. I mean, what are you going to say about my spelling if I'm the first one to tell you I can't spell? You know what I'm saying? And so if you make it, all of a sudden what it does for you is it makes you relaxed about you. And what I've learned is the more relaxed I am about me, the more I give permission to other people to be relaxed about me. I had a guy just before we came on said, Terry, I just want you to know I'm buying this elite package from so-and-so because I genuinely like the way you handle things. And he was speaking to, I don't put on a lot of airs in his mind. You know, maybe I put on airs in other places, But the point is this: I think he's resonating with an authenticity of the message. You know, that it's not happened for me overnight, because I was always the typical person. Oh gosh, will they like me? Will they judge me? Will they think that I talk funny because I'm from the South, or look funny because I do look funny, or any of these, you know, things that's going on in the back of our heads, which inevitably will shape the way we communicate. And then we'll violate rule number 1, which is be authentic. And if we can get past rule number 1, rule number two will take care of a lot of things for us. Because how many times is it frustrating? Have you ever been in a situation, open-ended question, that you know more about the subject at hand than anyone in the room, but you're not being listened to?
Every time I talk to my family.
That happens at the dinner table every night. But isn't it frustrating that you might be the greatest authority in a particular scenario, but your voice, your message is not cutting through? That is, to me, the definition of marketing hell. Because, I mean, it just is. I can solve your problem, but you won't listen to it because I haven't taken care of rule number 1, which is learn to be authentic, so that you've let your guard down. Okay, this is a real person. But rule number 2 does say you have to be an authority, establishing credibility and knowledge. While authenticity forms the emotional connection, authority builds the foundation of your message. What's the old rule about sales? The selling decision is an emotional decision, right? So if I emotionally like the person, then I logically start validating what I feel. Isn't it weird that I've got to emotionally buy before I will logically start rationalizing why that was a good decision? I'm not being swindled. It is just basic psychology. But what you follow up with after developing authenticity is that authority component. Your audience must believe that you have a solid understanding of the subject matter. Cultivating authority takes time and effort, but it's crucial for gaining the respect and attention of your audience. To establish authority, here's some things you need to do. Number 1, invest in research. Learn something. Pick up a book. Listen to a podcast. Study the subject right. Number 2, cite reliable sources. There's a lot of times I believe something, I want to say something, but so it's not coming from me, I'll actually be quoting someone else. That's a great rhetorical device I use a lot. Number 3, share your journey. Narrate your journey of learning and growth in the subject matter. One of the reasons I share my story is because I want people to know, listen, I have not done everything right all the time. And matter of fact, I've screwed up a lot. And here is a time in my life and what I learned from it. So, because that way people can understand, I relate to them and all of that. So I ask you guys on the panel, what are some ways that you invest in learning and researching? What are some ways that you cite sources? And what are some ways that you share your journey to help you establish your authority?
Well, my story is my journey.
Yeah.
One of the things that it dawned on me when you were talking about the bridge from authenticity to authority.
Yeah.
And how you can set it up. Way back when I was a lot younger, and
last week,
having gotten out of the Marine Corps, I was a newbie in the financial services arena, and I knew what I was talking about, but nobody would take me seriously. And I remember I went out to see this really, really big prospect. And I mean, he was a career changer if I could land the whale. And so what I did was I hired an airplane to fly over his house and take pictures of like his house and all of his acreage. And so when I showed up at his house, I had this picture rolled up in my hand. So I go through my presentation and I roll the picture out. And And I said, I'm going to leave this with you because, I think you're a pretty nice guy and everything. And the wife's looking at it. And they didn't want to take the proposal. And because I was getting to the point on estate taxes for them because they had a ton of assets. But they didn't have it properly sectored so that they could, be able to pass down the whole entity of the business to the next generation. And when they said no, that they weren't gonna, they were gonna think about it. They were worried about the money, and I said, well, if something were to happen to you, do you know what's going to happen? And they were like, well, and they went through the motions of telling me what would happen. And so I put everything in my briefcase, shut the lid, and I stood up and I tore the picture in two. And I said, which half do you want? And at that point, the wife, who had been fighting me the whole time, said, sit down. We're not done yet.
That's awesome.
And so they ended up actually doing the thing. And she's like, I want another picture. So I came back a week later and I had it framed. I had looked at, some of the pictures in their house and saw the frames that they were frame style they were using. So I went out and had it matted and framed for them.
Nice.
But it drilled home the point so hard to them that it's like, no matter what I said, they just didn't get it.
Yeah.
But when I ripped the picture in two, it was like I had torn their heart out.
That was an attention getter.
Okay. So.
Oh, that was great. That is great.
But, that bridge, we become authorities based on how we approach our business.
Yeah.
That said the average person in Who's Who reads a book a week. And so the average person who I would think would be a successful business person is reading probably 50 books a year.
Yeah.
And at a minimum.
Yeah.
And you start thinking, okay, you accumulate that over, 50, 20 years, 40 years. And you start to then think, Jim Rohn was big on, don't show me the big screen TV, show me your library.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing because you have to get better. And we have to push ourselves to get better because how do we train people to get better if we're not getting better?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I've always felt if you want to lead people, you need to be in a race of learning stuff first, and fast. Otherwise, leadership is outpacing the people you're leading, so you can find out what they need before they even get there and say, hey, this is what's coming around the corner, and this is the solutions and the services we provide to make it happen. But you can't do that if you're reacting to the things that are happening rather than studying what's going to happen and it's happening so that you can be the leader. Good stuff.
And that's what scares me the most about the way things have been going in today's day and age, right? These people are so used to just picking up a soundbite and then running with it. And they don't bother anymore with getting the full story. They don't bother to even check out the facts to see if it's true.
Yeah.
The soundbite says, turns out Lincoln was black. What? Lincoln was black? Next thing you know, that's going viral that everybody knew that Lincoln was black, right? The whole time. We all knew it.
Yeah.
Just in case anybody's taking this seriously, Lincoln was not black, folks. Pick up a book. Speaking of books, this book right here, Lori was talking, and it's not about Trump, actually. It's about Bill Zanker's life. Yeah. You guys know Bill Zanker, he created the Learning Annex. But Trump kicked it off.
Yeah.
Right? Trump is the reason why the Learning Annex existed, because Bill Zanger couldn't sell it. Man, he couldn't sell it for nothing. He was busting his tail trying to get people to show up, and nobody was going for it, right? He had I think 300 people, and he had this whole big space that he couldn't fill.
Wow.
And so he changed his tactics, right? He said, you know what I need? I need a speaker, somebody that's going to get butts in seats.
Yep.
So he reached out to all the speakers he could think of, right? I mean, dude was like on the phones, you know? And he reached out to Trump, and Trump said, well, how many people you got? And so he's like, oh, he's not going to come on for 3 people. So he's like, you know what? I got 1,000 people. And he's thinking that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he knows that, you know, if Trump comes along, he can probably find the rest of those people to make that 1,000. Trump says, I'll tell you what, if you get 10,000, I'll do it. And he's all like, oh my gosh. But he's like, deal, I'll take it. And so then he gets on the phone. He gets a whole crew on the phone. Everybody's on the phone. Long story short, because he changed up that tactic, and because he said, hey, I got Donald Trump going to be kicking this thing off, you know you want to be there. He switched up the mentality and the authenticity and the drive behind it.
Yeah.
Not only did he get 10,000 people, I can tell you the exact number. It's in the book. Hold on a second. Let's see here. He got 31,500 people for the first Learning Annex.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
That is very
These
cool.
are things you learn from books, folks. So when you're just listening to the sound bites, you're never going to get where you want to go. You know, Bobby will tell you, I'll tell you, Terry will tell you, Lori will tell you, your library keeps your brain functioning.
Absolutely.
And you got to continually refresh that library. I got a book in here on just about any subject you can think of, right? People are always trying to stump me. Usually they can't do it. They'll be like, you got a book on sanitary conditions in ancient Rome? Matter of fact, I do, you know?
Funny you should ask.
Would you like to borrow it? You can check it out.
That's right.
Just insane stuff, but it keeps your brain sharp. And it worries me when I see these kids today, because they don't, you know, they react into memes and little quick bites of information and half the story, if that.
Yeah.
You know, and these kids are going to run our country one day. You know what I mean? That's scary.
This is what happens when you give trophies to people that just play the sport rather than win the game. So,
well, they don't even have to play anymore just for showing up now. It used to be you had to win, right?
No.
And then it was, well, as long as you played. Now you don't even have to do that. You just have to be there. You can be a bench warmer the entire season. You'll still get your trophy.
Oh, goodness.
You're not allowed to be a bench warmer anymore. You have to have equal playing time.
Life is merit-based. I don't care what social engineering by some do-gooder tries to tell you. Life is merit-based. That's the way life functions. But anyway, yeah, I agree with both of you. Learning is so important if you want to establish your credibility. Lori, what are some ways that you work on establishing authority and credibility and knowledge for your purposes of communicating with authority?
Well, okay, I'm going to not answer that question.
Perfect.
Because as y'all were,
we'll marry ourselves after this.
Only on the Big Five, folks. Check it out.
As y'all were talking, it reminded me of a person who, it's Ronald Reagan. Okay. He used self-deprecating humor. He was relatable. I mean, even though he was like a movie star and all that, he somehow was able to connect with his audience, and that was the voters, the electors. Yeah. And how was he able to do that? So, you know, for those of you who are younger, go back and just watch some of his speeches. He was charming, personable, and anyone running for an office, what are they doing? They're selling themselves.
Yeah.
They're selling their authenticity, their ability, their authority, all those things. So I'm using my time to, go back to look at someone who just did it so well, better probably than anybody.
The great
ever.
communicator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He talks about that in his book, and this is his biography in American Life.
Yeah.
He talks about how he does it. He had every speech rewritten so an 8th grader could understand it
Yeah.
before he
he wrote a lot of his own speeches.
Yeah.
Most presidents have speech writers. He wrote a lot of his own, and even changed stuff where they were like, no, you can't change that. Well, I am changing it. So pretty cool.
Very cool. And he would stay up all night reading over them and learning them as lines like he was still an actor.
Yeah. And getting ready to deliver his lines. That's right.
They're like, Mr. President, we have teleprompters for that. No.
No, I read somewhere where he wore contacts.
Yeah.
And he was having problems with one of the big speeches. It might have been the State of the Union or something like that. It was a big speech. And he went up and delivered it anyway without his contacts in, couldn't see anything because he didn't have his corrective lenses in, and went off without a hitch because, like you said, Chris, he stayed up and memorized his lines to start with.
Yeah.
So he was just delivering. Now, and Lori, anytime you want to avoid a question to prop up Ronald Reagan, you have my eternal permission to do that.
That meeting that I missed?
Yes.
When I was up in North Carolina.
When you was hopping from one bar to the next one bar?
Right. You're right. I was trying to get a bar. You guys were talking about sales experiences.
Yeah.
What was it? Embarrassing sales experiences or learning situations?
Yeah, a little funny sales stories from the field.
I actually now get to tell that.
Okay.
All right.
I was out in California and I was meeting with Marvin Davis. I was working with a group of guys, and we were trying to put on a kickboxing pay-per-view. And my job was to raise the money. And so I was going around to some of the big investors that I knew that had been involved with boxing and also had been involved in, this is pre-MMA.
Yeah.
And so I scheduled an appointment with Marvin Davis. Now, he was at the time, former head of Gulf and Western, and he was a powerhouse in California and Hollywood. And so I go bouncing into the building, and I realized that I didn't have the one thing that I needed. So I ran back to the car to get it, and I come in, and I see this elevator that's absolutely, it's open. And I'm thinking, hey, my elevator. And so I get in and I hit the button of the floor that I'm going to, and this elevator took off like a rocket. And I'm thinking, I'm going through the top of the building. And Marvin Davis's office, he was in the what I call the Die Hard building where they did the first Die Hard movie.
Yeah, yeah.
That was like his conference room on the top floor.
Oh, wow.
And so I go zipping up to the floor and the elevator dings, and I'm standing there right in the doorway, and I go to step off, and I take one step, and there was a guy getting on, and we bump into each other, and I hear this, well, hello there. And, there's a rumor that the Secret Service, they're very fast and very strong. Let me tell you from firsthand personal experience, they are really, really strong, and they are really, really fast. And, here I am at about 190 pounds, and I'm being tossed around like a 50-pound sack of potatoes. And I had actually walked into Ronald Reagan.
Oh, wow.
And they're like, how did you get on the elevator? I said, door was open, hit the button, whoosh, I'm here, bingo. And Reagan is chuckling. And there was supposed to be a
No
Secret Service
way.
guy guarding the elevator at the bottom. So all of a sudden, guns are out. I'm like face down on this desk, like spread eagled. And
Wow.
they go down, they come back up, and I guess the guy had gone to the bathroom or something, but they were going to deal with him outside.
That poor guy.
So I got to shake Ronald Reagan's hands. And
That is cool.
So I go into this meeting with Marvin Davis, and I walk into probably the biggest office known to man. And Marvin Davis was a big guy, 300 plus pounds. He was 6'4", 6'5". And it was like snowfall in his office. The carpet was so deep.
Oh,
And,
wow.
you have the skyline of Los Angeles, the mountains, and the ocean. It's this panoramic view that you can't buy. And I go through my presentation, and I get to the number. And, how you always have to, you ask for the order.
Yeah.
And you give him the number. And he said, it's too small. He said, I only look at X number a million. He said, that's the minimum, just so I could get it on the balance sheet, because that's the number we round to.
Wow.
And it was not only a lesson in humility after getting thrown around by the Secret Service, but, to have my feathers ruffled twice. But he did say, I do know somebody who you need to talk to. And he said, don't talk to the husband. He's a jerk. Talk to his wife. And he said, when I need anything, I call her. And so he gives me Ivana Trump's phone number.
Wow.
And said, I'll be in touch with her. He said, you get your rear end to New York City. And he said, you'll sit down with her and she'll make the decision as to whether or not the Trumps are in.
Wow.
Nice.
And so, like 2 days later, I'm on my way to New York from LA. And, when I walk in, and then I go in and see her. So that's a story for another day. But that's my Ronald Reagan story.
Nice.
That's
Nice.
cool.
That is so cool. So
I
you
actually met Reagan as well. So that's really neat.
You didn't insult him.
Well,
You shook his hand,
I
right?
actually met him by just coincidence, right? I think he wanted to meet me. So I was doing a thing for school, right, in like 1986. And I was on the school newspaper, right? And I wanted to impress people because most of the people in my class didn't think I had a shot at being a news reporter. So I was like, I can do it, And so I found out that, what was her name? State Senator Hawkins, Paula Hawkins. She was giving a speech in Orlando. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go see if I can get an interview with Senator Paula Hawkins. And so I was over there because she was campaigning for her next term, which I don't think she won, but that's not the point. So I go down there. Of course, I can't get near this woman, right? I'm a little kid and stuff like that. So I go over and I'm all upset, and somebody sees me and they say, why are you so unhappy? You should be happy, And I was like, I'm trying to get an interview for my school newspaper with this senator, and I can't get near her, And they said, well, I can probably make that happen because I'm on her staff. So if you have time to wait, and so they asked my mom, can he wait? My mom said, yeah, sure, we can wait. So we waited till after the speech was over and after a bunch of time had left. And then they said, okay, go on up to the hotel room. And so we went up to like the 5th floor or something like that. And I go in there, there's all these people around, and I'm going to go interview this senator. I'm like, yeah, I got my thing on lockdown. Well, Ronald Reagan had been there to introduce her, right? And to talk about her, talk her up. Well, I guess he's still there. And he comes into the room while I'm meeting Paula Hawkins, right? And so now I'm meeting Senator Paula Hawkins, and I'm meeting the president of the freaking United States of America. I mean, it's a little kid's dream.
Yeah,
right?
for
I'm
real.
like, what? So I got to interview them both briefly for my school newspaper, which was the Gateway Gazette.
Nice.
And that was a heck of a night for me, you know.
I tell you what, but the lesson here is if you're out there in the highways and the byways and you have activity going, you will trip into opportunity, won't you?
You will. You absolutely will, because there is no, I mean, just look what Bill Zanker did. He got on the phones, he started working, he started getting on that activity, and 31,000 people he ended up with instead of the 10 that Trump wanted him to get.
Absolutely. It is amazing what you can run into if you just stay active. And that's one of the things we try to encourage our new members a lot is just get activity going. If you'll just get your activity up, you will be amazed. I mean, I sold, you guys might not know this name, but used to sing for the Billy Graham Crusades, George Beverly Shea. I wasn't even supposed to be out on the floor. I was supposed to be back in the office, but I was out on the floor, and all of a sudden this big Prevost bus pulls up into the parking lot, and out walks this elderly man, and I start listening to him. I said, wait a minute, and he's absolutely. I ended up befriending him and selling him tons of keyboards and stuff, you know, and it's the same way I met my buddy with Chicago, Bill Champlin, and all of these people that have been like heroes or influential people. Why? Because I was just active. I was out there on the floor in the highways and the byways of my particular industry. You'd be amazed. Just stay active. You'll run into the president of the United States, and might get thrown around like a rag doll. But after he shakes your entire body, you get to shake his hand.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, third and finally, the third pillar of this is being accessible, and that is connecting with an audience, a diverse audience. An influential message isn't confined to a specific niche or audience. It should be accessible and relatable to a wide range. And I would say it's okay to be niche in your targeting, but even in your niche, you want it to be accessible to that niche. And so sometimes you can be speaking to a specific audience, but the language you're using is so foreign to a person that's not that deep in your industry or your interest that you can lose them. And this happens in business, it happens in religion, it happens in politics, it happens in every walk of life, that there has to be a message sent out that you're wanting it to be influential. If it's not vetted properly and it's written by the pastor or written by the sales staff, then all of a sudden it gets wonky. You know, sometimes, you know, in coaching that I do in the ministry, one of the things I'm doing with a lot of folks has been walking in their faith for a very, very long time, highly educated, got doctorates in theology and all this other stuff. I say, you need to know your audience. It's okay to talk like this in a seminary or even in a class of higher learning. But when you're dealing with the general populace on Sunday morning, most of the people that's walking through that church door is asking, Lord, how can you fix my marriage? How can you help me be a better parent to my kids? How can I get food on the table? Practical things. You know, you get into the difference between Calvinism versus Arminianism, and you get into, you know, systematic theologies and all that. Their eyes are rolling back in their head because it's like, how do I apply this to my day-to-day living? So you got to know your audience. And it's the same way when we talk to people about marketing and different things. I love talking with you guys about funnel design and automation and all that. But that's for this audience. That's for us. When we're out there talking to the general public, how would you like with one click of a button automate a lot of the, you know, pesky little sales tasks that you have to do? That's all they care. They don't care how it happens, just that it happens, you know. And so what are some ways that you guys have worked on in your sphere of influence and fields that you work within to help simplify your language, use analogies and examples, and ways of addressing a common concern so that the message that you're trying to bring is accessible to that niche audience that you're trying to approach. Give me some examples of what you've done.
Well, yeah, for me, it's about simplification of what I do, right? Because people don't know what I do.
Yeah.
You guys don't even know what I do. You know what I mean? Nobody knows what I do. I don't know what I do.
I've often wondered, what is it that Chris actually does?
What does this guy do? You know, people ask me all the time, what is it you do?
You go tie shopping.
If I go and I say, I like that one. We're both tie shopping. Not wearing that today, but still. If I go out there and I tell them what I do, I'm going to lose them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In a minute.
Yeah.
If I start explaining the financing world to you, you're just going to, I mean, your eye's going to roll in the back of your head in a second, right?
Yes.
If I start explaining funnels and marketing tools and things like that, your eyes are going to roll back in your head in a second. You know, I don't have, what do they say? You got 90 seconds? I don't got 90 seconds. I don't got 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You got maybe 10 on the average today because people don't have any attention span.
Yeah.
Right. So I tell them, you know, what I do is I help businesses grow their business by providing the little things that they're lacking.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, like what? Now they're asking me a question. Now I'm in a conversation. I can start expanding, you know, but that initial conversation, that initial answer has got to be short. You know, I help businesses grow their businesses by filling in the gaps, essentially, with the things that they lack. And then they go, oh, well, that's interesting. Tell me more.
Exactly.
That's how I've done it. Anybody else got a different idea how they do it?
That's great. What are some ways you've simplified your message, Lori?
I think back to what I'd said before, understanding who your ideal customer is, knowing what their pain points are, and then providing a solution. You don't have to explain how you got there. You just have to say, what if I could solve this for you?
Yes.
And it's kind of like, I'll go back to my Yellow Pages days. You ever see those attorneys ads? You know, they had the big full page, and we called them double truck. That was a double full page again. Criminal defense attorneys. And these ads would have pictures of the guy in jail, you know, the guy in jail, or the you know, personal injury, the car crash. Well, you're showing the problem. Don't show the problem. Show the solution in a simple way that speaks to, because you know your audience, you know what their problem is, you know what their pain point is. Simply show them the solution.
Yeah.
And you're going to connect with them that way.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing is they know what their problem is already. They don't need you to tell them.
Yeah. Exactly.
They do know what the solution is.
That's exactly right. Yeah, the more and all the ad copies I've done selling my marketing solutions and stuff, specifically like the insurance, you know, the more I can say, how would you like on tap unlimited leads coming in to your phone? I can have insurance buyers calling you on a daily basis. If you'd like more information, how I can do that. I don't talk to them about software. I don't talk to them about coaching. I don't talk to them about systems. I just talk to them. This is what we do. We get inbound calls coming to you. Huh? Yeah. You know, because then it provokes that conversation. Well, how do you do that? Well, we sit down with you, figure out what it is you're selling, what the niche is that buys that, help you construct a message, and then automate that message going out to them, you know. Still trying to stay away from any technical jargon, you know, but good stuff.
Yeah, I agree. The other simple ad where it just said, we buy invoices. That's it. I didn't say, hey, do you need money?
Yeah.
Or are you having cash flow problems? You know, because they already know what their problem is. We buy invoices. That's the solution. And it worked really good. It's literally, that was the entire ad. It wasn't even a picture. It was just the words, we buy invoices on a white background. And it worked really well.
That's great. Bobby?
I agree with Lori. It's about your audience. I learned that coaching boys baseball when my youngest one started, or actually the oldest one started, at age 6, 7, and I had my first team of like 6-year-olds, and you can't communicate with them using words, or you have to create pictures in their mind.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned to communicate, because as a left-hander, I can't really learn by looking at words or hearing words. I have to see pictures.
Yeah.
And so whenever I'm talking with somebody, I want to paint a picture that they can see in their mind's eye. Because if they see the picture, they understand what I'm talking about.
I like that.
And not just that, Bobby, but they'll remember it too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what Lori was talking about a few episodes back, where we were talking about how to learn, and she brought up that Gestalt methodology, which is you see in pictures, and then you fill in how those pictures connect through the logical application of it. So it's amazing how those lessons translate.
I'm impressed, Terry, that you remembered Gestalt.
Don't be impressed. I wrote it down because I was going to use this and drop it later. I was just looking for the.
I want to see him spell Gestalt.
Hey. I've got
You took my line.
I've got an AI robot for that now. I don't have to.
A robot for that.
Well, guys, you have been listening. Go what?
Fun show. A lot of people are reacting really well and positively to this show, by the way. I don't know if you guys have been getting the same feedback that I have, but people are saying this show is awesome. They really like what we're doing here. So
the only feedback I've gotten is Terry, if you'd stop talking as much, the value would go up exponentially. So I'm trying. But anywho,
I had a guy this morning, he texted and he was asking me about something else. And he said, P.S. the Big Five is awesome.
Well, tell him we said thank you.
Well, you just did.
We appreciate that.
I know he's listening.
Absolutely. Well, this has been episode 5, I believe. Is that right? Episode 5 on how to construct a message that resonates. We hope you guys have enjoyed it and continue to send us feedback. Let our individual panel here know what you like and ways we can improve. We can always figure out ways. And if you've got a suggestion on something you would like us to cover, because we're just spitballing here week to week, this is what I'd like to talk about, or this is what I'd like to talk about. But if there's something specific you would like us to get into, let us know. And we'd be more than happy to try to tackle that. Until next time, this is the Big Five with the Fab Four on episode 5. We'll talk to you later.
Inspiring, informative, and informational.
This is TTW3.